Hello and welcome to this Eureka webinar in association with Southco. My name is Roshni Baines and I am the online editor for Eureka. Today's webinar is entitled Tailored Access Hardware Solutions for Trucks Explained, and here to present it is Andy Thornton, Southco's Senior Design Manager. Before I hand it over to Andy, I should just like to say that if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the box on the right-hand side of your screen and we'll endeavour to answer them at the end. If we don't have time for your questions, please rest assured that we'll hand them over to Southco's team and they'll answer it for you offline. And with that being said, it just remains for me to hand over to Andy to start his presentation.
Thanks, Rosh. Hello again, everyone. My name is Andy Thornton. As Rosh mentioned, I'm the engineering manager responsible for design here at Southco. What I'd like to talk to you about today is how we tailor existing solutions for the truck industry, particularly access hardware. So if I look at what we do here, a bit about myself is 20 plus years with Southco, and that has always been within the engineering discipline. First 10 years focusing on design, and the last 10 plus years focusing on the leadership of the design teams. Throughout that time, we've always created new products. That's continuing what we do. With a focus, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, on the truck industry. Personally, I've had a lifelong interest in cars, boats, and heavy vehicles, so it's made it easy and interesting to work with those industries and create product for them. A bit about Southco, if you're not aware. Here at Southco, we create access hardware. So what is access hardware? That is anything that opens, closes, or moves or positions is what we do. We call it touch points because people interact with them. You go and you physically touch a handle, you open it, you pull a door open. So you may then want to position the door and keep it open. Again, that's what we do. We're around the world, situated in quite a few places. We manufacture in a number of facilities, and we've got a handbook of over 100,000 parts off the shelf. And it's using those that basically we create new ones. And we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. But just focusing on Europe, I'm based in Worcester, just across the road from the Worcester facility, which is primarily injection molding. They also have metals forming processes there and distribution. Over in Poland, we've got a big factory in Rzeszów that do a lot of metals work, so die casting, stamping and machining, and as well as distribution for Europe. Really the focus of today is I call it reimagining without reinvention. This is, we look at that image of 100,000 products. We take 500 engineers, which is our global community of engineers here at Southco, and we take one product and we create something different. And over years we've created over 40,000 custom products. And you see on the screen there's quite an industrial looking hinge on the left, and then on the right we see a tablet holder, and I'm going to talk a bit more about those in a bit. I've got 4 examples to share with you of similar products that we've done for the truck industry. Looking at a truck, and that pictured is a European style cab over vehicle. We break it down into the exterior and the interior. So exterior, typically anything that opens, closes or moves, we're there. So it could be the grille, it could be the toolboxes, it could even be the aerofoil kit or the side panels. They all have latches, they all have typically hinges, and they all need to open, close, and perhaps even lock and secure. I'll share with you an example for that in a moment. Interior-wise, now this is quite a broad subject, I think, for trucks. I compare them. A truck is part office, part car, and part RV. It has to provide a lot of different functions to the users. What's nice is because we work in a large number of industries, we've got products from those exact industries that we can pull in and use in this application area. Okay, so jump into the chassis and exterior, and these are some of the products, and everything you see on there you can see on Southco.com. Rotary latches. So I've got an example to show you on rotary latches. Heavy duty steel products that keep doors closed. They can be operated directly or operated externally, remotely, if styling requires that. With the drawer latches, the ability to pull two panels together and hold them tight and resist vibration. So we have a whole range of products for that. I talked about hinges, so we've got surface mount, detent, we've got an example of that to show in a moment, and also concealed. And then the Zeus quarter turn lines, so quick access fasteners that we can use instead of traditional nuts and bolts and screws. And that enables a person to get in to a part and access and service it quickly. So first example, rotary latches. I call them an R4 product line. We've got a number of these from different sizes that you can see across the top of the screen. And the particular application here was for toolboxes on a truck. So we took one of those, and it was kind of a mid-size product, and then we set about customizing it to suit the needs of a OEM. They got ideas around how that needed to look, feel, and also how they needed to connect it to their additional systems. So we needed to modify it, take that standard product and convert it to something new. And that's exactly what we did. And we see the image on the lower part of the screen of the results of that. So just looking on the camera view here, I'll put in what's cited as the standard product available to all on the web. And then we look at the modified product slightly below it. Whilst it looks very different, in fact, all the metal work is new, the principle and the operating mechanism and let's say the performance is unchanged. So we see how it now mounts on the sides, has a longer trigger for the connection for cables to operate. Interestingly, you can perhaps see that it's reversed, and that is because this new latch is designed, it's not handed, it can be mounted on the left or the right of the vehicle. And then finally, just out of view, is the wiring loom connection. What was important about that is that connects to the vehicle's illumination and also alarm system, so that when you open the latch, it turns the light on, or if needed, it sets the alarm off. So that was a customized product based around something existing already that had a different purpose, a different way of mounting, a different way of using it. So changing gears and looking at the interior of the vehicle, there's a whole number of different application zones, and I picked sort of three to focus on. Push to close and glove box latches. So anything that needs storage, any cupboards, any lockers, any compartments that need closing and retaining shut, we make latches for, and I'll show an example of those in a minute. Then I'm introducing the word constant torque and counterbalance hinges. This is particular types of hinges that hold or position devices in a configuration. And a classic example of that could be a laptop hinge. You open the lid and it holds it wherever you wish to view the screen. And that's very much linked to the final, which is tilt monitor mount. So we see on that image there, there's at least two large monitors that perhaps need moving and positioning. And I'll share an example of products that we've created for that shortly. So first one, storage latching. So this product here borrows heavily on our automotive work. We've created a lot of glove box latches for cars, and you see the image on the top in the middle. That is a rotary latch. Again, it's rotary like the previous one, but this is all plastic, and it's slightly lighter duty and intended for internal use. And then the two below it, they're offsprings of that, used and created for the truck industry. So again, taking that existing theme and building on it. The one on the left shows a slightly curved paddle or handle. What we often do is work with truck OEMs and tier suppliers, and we need to style our products to meet the styling requirements of the vehicle. And that's a classic example. We took the existing rather square-looking product and we restyled that paddle to make it fit in with that application environment. The one on the right with the sort of orangey coloured paddle, it looks kind of drastically different. However, the layout is very different, but the operating principles of it are the same. You can see that it's also inherited a lock to secure the storage compartment. We make a lot of locks, so we're able to combine two existing products and put those together. If I just put those into view on the camera, we see here the original, as I mentioned, rather rectangular looking, regular shaped mechanism. You see that, you may just be able to see that rotating paw, which actually does the securing. If I just actuate it, you can see it opens. And then we see its first offspring, as I've called it, which is styled and angled and made to fit in a different application. This particular one was a under bed storage, and it works in conjunction with a hinge I'm going to show you shortly to secure that storage compartment closed. And I mentioned the other one, which is kind of a bit more radically different in terms of layout. This is an overhead bin latch. Again, different layout, but you can see that existing rotating form, which operates just like that. And that obviously has the benefit of the lock plug as well. So that's a single point latch. Single point, it latches on one point. Moving on to its closely related product, 2-point latch. Again, a product we've borrowed from the automotive industry. 2-point latches are very common in car glove boxes. You see those on the top middle. We then recreated an existing platform into one for an overhead storage bin, and you see that in the center. Interestingly, working with the truck area OEM, we're able to rationalize the designs and get the number of configurations down to one. So there's typically 3 overhead storage bins. Initially, they were all different sizes and requiring different latches. After a bit of design iterations, we're able to standardize on one latch that could be used in the 3 locations. And that was the end result. And just putting those into view on the camera. The first examples I'm showing are just what we call the Southco standard coupler unit. It's a coupling gearbox that enables you to connect 2 latching rods to one system and to be used together to secure. So building on that existing theme, we then created this new product which integrates the paddle and handle and lock plug within it. Interestingly, there's a second variant which doesn't have the lock plug. That's for non-locking applications. And that enables you to simply actuate and release the overhead bin by pulling on the handle. So that was an example of a 2-point latch used for interior storage. Okay, I did indicate that the single point latch I just showed was used in an underbed application, and this is the hinge that works with it. So this is for the storage compartments. You lift the lid up, and then you would access perhaps luggage that's inside. At that point, you don't want the lid to be falling down on you while you're removing your luggage or looking inside the storage bin. So this particular hinge holds the lid open. It does that because it's called a detent hinge, based on a Southco standard product class, which we sell with different forces, different opening angles. And what we did is we took one of those and reconfigured it to work in this application. So we repackaged the mechanism. The mechanism worked very well, but it just needed to be repackaged so it would fit inside the OEM's lid. And that's what that image is on the lower part of the screen. So if we then take a look at those in a bit more detail. Okay, we see the original hinge, and then we see its customized or modified version. Looking at side profile, you may just be able to see that it detents, clicks in position as it opens, and this does exactly the same. You see slightly other changes. We've got an exposed end. It's simplified slightly because in the application it's covered, you can't see it, so it doesn't need to be, let's say, aesthetically pleasing in its own state. So that holds the storage bin open. And just moving on to the last example I wanted to share with you today. This is introducing position control as a subject. I mentioned laptop hinges, that's the classic example, but we have a large range of hinges that position or apply a torque to the lid. It's a big range, but what's nice is each particular product has a whole number of variants configurable based on torques, based on reverse or asymmetric values. So we can take those hinges and use them and dial in to what's needed in the application. I think as a sort of start point, they can be quite industrial looking, and that particular one is. And we took that silver metal torque hinge or torque engine, and we then created a tablet holder. So this again was working with a European OEM. They needed to be able to give their vehicles a tablet holder that was fixed to the instrument panel, and asked us to work on that with those torque hinges. So we see the result is a sprung loaded cradle added to a position control arm, and that arm itself has got 4 different rotation axes that I've highlighted with the green arrows. And each of those axes has got a torque value, maybe symmetric, maybe asymmetric, so it's different forward and reverse. And during the course of the development, we were able to work with the engineers of the customer and their focus groups and work out what that feel should be. You know, which should be the strongest joint, which should be the weakest, which should be the easiest to open. And that's when we created that whole entire tablet holder and arm. We'll look at that in a bit more detail. We look at the start point. Rather a small device on screen, but that is torque engine that we can then insert or overmold in an injection molding press to create a new shape. And that's exactly what we did on this example, albeit the new shape was a complete arm and tablet holder. So when I look at the difference, we look at the tablet holder in position, and we can just about see the arm and the different joints. And how that product fits into those. So each of those joints moves, it positions, it holds where it's left, it rotates even to create that complete assembly. And with that, that concludes my examples, but I think I included these images here just to show what could be next. Interestingly, when we just looked at the tablet holder, I think if we'd looked at this presentation perhaps 11 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been talking about tablet holders, because at that point we didn't realise they were a thing or even we needed them. So I'm not going to predict what another 10 years is going to happen, or what devices we could need then. But what I would say is all the products I've shown you today, they have an electrical equivalent, and some of those shown on screen. When I say electrical equivalent, that could be electrical actuation, electrical movement, or maybe electrical locking or isolation. And those products exist today. We're continuing to work on them and create more, and also to link them to apps and other control systems. And I think the advantages with electric, as well as, let's say, near silent operation, is you can control how they're used and when they're used. So the ability to perhaps isolate a compartment or door when a truck's in movement can be done electrically, or to control who's opened it and when they can open it and who's authorized to do that is another very easy thing that can be done electrically that is a lot harder to do mechanically. So I see great potential for products such as those. And that really concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you so much for that. Now let's move on to some of the questions. So the first question I have is, how long do you spend on a new project before you are ready to produce parts?
Okay, yeah, so customization and modification does take time. I think, from when we received the inquiry, if it was a simple modification, design time could be a matter of weeks, for the easiest ones. If there's new tooling involved, then tools have to be made or assembly lines produced, so that can run into several months. I think for the more custom developments, depending on when we're introduced into the project, they could be running for several years in conjunction with the engineering teams at the OEMs or tier ones. So yeah, from let's say 2 months to 4 years could be a duration for that.
And reimagining without reinvention was mentioned. Does this mean you're not inventing new products?
Yeah, so I use the term reimagining without reinvention. It's not to say we don't invent, and I'm particularly proud of what we do at Southco in terms of creating new inventions. And the team that work on trucks in Europe alone, we probably invent 2 to 3 and new products a year, which we then go on to patent. And then there's a further 9 teams in Southco. So that gives you an idea of the new, let's say, access hardware inventions that we're creating. But what I would say is that's good and that's fun. I love to reuse what we have already. And I think one of the advantages with working with a large number of industries is we can take something out of one industry, put it in something else that's never before been used or seen. So if we can, reuse an existing design that works, and that was some of the ones I just showed with you, it does save a lot of time and it does save a lot of money for everyone involved. So I love to reuse and reimagine as well.
And how much do these cost?
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. Being an engineer, I don't ever openly talk about price. That's not my role. But what I would say is, if I compare it to complexity, the 1-point latch I showed with a new paddle, that's been made and optimized for mass production. I mentioned that it came from the automotive industry. We make it on very large tools, 8 impression with automated assembly. So when the customer asks us to do a new paddle, it's only one new tool, so that reduces the investment for that. And also because of the volumes that they're made in, it's also pretty cost effective to buy. At the other end of the scale, the tablet holder is probably the most complex one I showed you today. There's a lot of features going on inside that. And also there's a lot of tools and styling aspects that were very unique to that customer. So a lot of specific new tools required to make that. So that needs a larger investment and obviously a larger cost. But likewise, if anyone does wish to talk about cost, then please inquire from Southco. My commercial colleagues would love to speak to you about that.
Great. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. But as mentioned earlier, if you have a question that we've not had the time to ask, please remember it'll be handed on to Southco and they'll answer it for you offline. All that remains then is to say thank you very much to Andy for his presentation, and thanks so much to all of you for joining us. Thank you again.
Thanks for your time and goodbye.